Hey guys, welcome back to another little talk of mine. It's Sunday night, have my tea, have my sweater, we're good to go. I wanted to do kind of another video based on kind of the one that I did last week about perception of self and failure. And I want to do this one because I feel like if I had heard someone say that they were going through this when I was going through this, I would have felt less alone and I would have forgiven myself more. Yeah, so let's get right into it. So, from a very young age, I grew up on unrealistic movie plot lines, and I also had my parents' timeline in the back of my head. And what their timeline was is they met in high school, got married right out of college, and then had kids at a very young age. So I assumed that their trajectory would become my trajectory. So I had these major milestones all planned out, and how my life I thought would go went something like this. It went high school, graduate high school, go to college, meet the love of my life in either high school or college, graduate, get married, have a successful career that started maybe in college even, but have it right out of the gate, and then go back to school, and then have babies at 27, and then my life would be over, because I assumed that once you had kids you really stopped having any dreams or time for yourself, and you had to give up everything, which I understand now is a really flawed thing to think. So that was my timeline, and my timeline just saw me going up, up, and up, and up, and up. There was no accountability for any kind of life, like those valleys happening, those highs and lows. So realistically, my life went something like, I went to high school, I graduated high school, I went to college. Well, I went to a conservatory for 1 year. I didn't get asked back into said conservatory. I went to a different college, and then I started dating someone right before I graduated college. I graduated, or I finished my classes. Then I started working in retail as a safety net job. I needed to have a job. Then I was employed 2 other places, was not really a fan of my jobs, but did it. And then I went through a bad breakup, and then I basically caved in on myself. So at 22, at like 3 months out of college, I was so embarrassed that I wasn't hitting those major milestones, and I had deemed myself as a failure, and I really started to dislike who I was. Like, there was no, I just stopped caring about myself. And that's such a dangerous thing to do, is to stop caring about yourself and stop forgiving yourself. And so I was looking at other people who was having the timelines that I had wanted. So people who were getting married at 23 and engaged at 23 and planning weddings and stuff. And I was comparing myself to them, and I was wanting what they were wanting, even if it wasn't good for me at the time. Even if I could see that it wasn't good for me, I was convincing myself that that was the things that I wanted because it had worked for someone else. I assumed that it would work for me, and that was not the case at all. I was basically convincing myself and for these things. But it's like, now that I think back on it, it's like I could not realistically have these things and be happy. I needed to learn how to be happy with myself. I needed to learn how to forgive myself, and I've always rolled my eyes at the concept of forgiving oneself. But honestly, it was one of the most important things I've learned. I was convincing myself that people's trajectories would be mine, and that's not the case at all. So because I was not hitting that up, up, and up, my love life was just like, obsolete. My career really didn't have one. I had jobs, and my music or acting was not nearly where I wanted it to be. I just assumed that these lulls meant I was failing, I was regressing, I could not get better. So then I started seeing myself as someone who peaked in college and that they had nothing else to offer for the rest of their lives, which is really dangerous. So basically what I've learned through the past few years is that I had to stop putting timelines and age stamps on major milestones. Like you cannot rush major milestones. You cannot rush meeting someone that you're going to end up with. You cannot rush the age that you're going to start having children with. You're going to have those things when it's right for you to have them. It may not be necessarily when you had thought that you were going to have them. It may be earlier, it may be later, but it's not wrong to not have them when you think that you're going to. It's also not wrong to go through realistically what is life with highs and lows. So what I've walked away with is I'm not thinking that I'm failing at life because I go through lulls. I mean, you need the lows to get the highs. That is also another cliche thing to say, but it's important to remember that. It's important to recognize that your unique path is not going to be the same as someone else's. It's not going to line up with that timeline, and just because you're not hitting it when they're hitting it, you also have to take into considerations that your wants may not be their wants. Your paths are going to be different. So stop comparing them and thinking that you're failing because they're getting something at an earlier age. That's not what it means. And lastly, or not lastly, I've learned a lot of things. Stop thinking that life ends after college. It doesn't. You have the rest of your life to live. It doesn't even end in your 20s. So we're all still young here. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep working hard. Keep striving for the best. And also, allow yourself to grow. Allow yourself to grow. Allow yourself to learn. Allow yourself to forgive. Sorry, it got weird. But once I started learning that I had a lot to offer, and that you do continue to grow after 23, and that you are allowed to make those mistakes and go through those lows, and that doesn't mean you failed. I started feeling much better about myself. I've been kinder to myself, which, I think that's super important. And we got to understand that just because we're not hitting those major milestones at the times that we thought that we were going to, doesn't mean that we're never going to have those things. And it doesn't mean that, we failed because we didn't have the life that we thought that we were going to have at 15 years old. Because I can guarantee you when you're 15, you don't plan for the setbacks that may eventually happen. I didn't think I was going to go through a lot of the things that I've gone through at 15 years old. I just didn't think that. But it doesn't mean that I am a failure at my life. Embrace your own unique path, and yeah. Oh, gosh. Hopefully I'm not forgetting anything. I've tried to do this a few times. Anyway. Once I start rambling, I cut myself off. So if I miss things, I'll try to plug them in somehow. But anyway, here's to allowing for growth, and here's to working for the things that you want, but allowing yourself to understand that you'll receive them when you're ready. Maybe we're just not ready yet, but we're working for them. All right, cheers, good night.